Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a terror attack in Jerusalem claims the lives of 4 soldiers. Further events unfold regarding the criminal investigation into Prime Minister Netanyahu, and Israel starts to make good on her payback threats to the UN. I'm Aaron Porras, here with the latest news in Israel. Earlier today, a vehicular terror attack in southern East Jerusalem's Armon HaNatziv neighborhood claimed the lives of 1 male and 3 female soldiers and injured well over a dozen more, all members of Israeli officers' training. 2 of the injured are said to be in critical condition. Magen David Adom paramedics and the Jerusalem police are reporting that the truck was driven into a number of pedestrians on the Armon HaNatziv promenade as the terrorists plowed through a group of soldiers exiting a tour bus. The terrorist, who is said to be from the nearby Jabal Mukaber neighborhood in Jerusalem, was reportedly killed by an armed civilian. A gag order on further details of the attack has been issued, and we'll keep you as updated as we can. More information is now coming to light over the graft allegations that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted gifts from 2 businessmen. One of those men is now believed to be famous Israeli tycoon and Hollywood producer Arnon Milchan, and the other is Yediot Achronot publisher Arnon Moses. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
Arnon Moses is often described as a longtime nemesis of the Prime Minister, but he is now allegedly being investigated under caution along with Netanyahu. According to the reports, Netanyahu promised Moses that he would work to close down rival newspaper Israel Hayom in exchange for a more favorable coverage. Haaretz newspaper is apparently in possession of a series of audio recordings of Netanyahu and Moses that appear to corroborate the suspicions. The evidence does not necessarily point at financial favors, but rather indicates an attempt to forge a pact under which the businessman would help Netanyahu shore up his leadership, with Moses benefiting by the closure of the rival newspaper, owned by Netanyahu's friend and ally, Sheldon Adelson. Netanyahu responded to the latest information by telling ministers at today's cabinet meeting his oft-repeated mantra, "Now that I know what is being investigated, I can tell you with certainty. There will be nothing because there is nothing." The Prime Minister has already undergone 2 rounds of questioning by police. Local media is reporting suspicions that film mogul Arnon Milchan gave the Israeli premier and his wife Sarah cases of pink champagne, quality cigars, and expensive suits, and even fancy meals prepared by private chefs. In all, the gifts are worth hundreds of thousands of shekels. Milchan's lavishing of gifts is believed to have begun many years ago, when Netanyahu was head of Israel's political opposition. The probe centers on whether there may have been illegal conflicts of interest on Netanyahu's part in exchange. One local television channel is reporting that in 2014, the Prime Minister telephoned U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry 3 separate times to ask for his help in arranging a long-term visa for Milchan to live in the United States, which was, in fact, ultimately granted. Former Israeli Labor Party leader Sheli Yachimovich is criticizing Milchan for being the Prime Minister's, quote, sugar daddy. And her fellow Zionist Union member of Knesset Tzipi Livni says Netanyahu has lost the moral right to be Prime Minister. Additional witnesses are expected to offer testimony over the next few days, after which the Israeli Attorney General is expected to decide whether it's warranted to authorize that Netanyahu undergo a 3rd formal round of questioning. This is Steve Leibowitz for ILTV.
The police have been keeping the information on the Netanyahu criminal investigation close to the vest, but the Israeli media has been able to gain access to some of the details. Jerusalem Post editor-in-chief Yaakov Katz told ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that based on what we know, the Prime Minister could be in deep legal trouble.
Look, I don't have many details on the investigation. The police, for once, I have to say and commend them for this. They've done a good job at keeping their cards close to them, or their hand close to them. They haven't given details. Nothing's really leaked out. There's vague information about benefits or payments that he's received from different businessmen. We'll wait to see exactly what the charges are. But the fact of the matter is that a prime minister that is questioned under caution by the police is a big deal. And it does symbolize and signify that there's something big that's happening. Because you don't easily, as the the Attorney General, the State Prosecutor, the head of the Police Investigations Department, they don't very quickly or easily order an interrogation and a questioning of the Prime Minister unless there's something that really is out there that's outstanding, that there's meat on it, that there's some concrete evidence that points to something big. I hope personally that that's not the case. Like you mentioned, we've had enough prime ministers who have been questioned and interrogated and gone to jail, unfortunately. I think it's important that the rule of law applies to all Israelis on an equal level, and that's an important message, that we know that even if you're a prime minister or president, you're just like you or I. But with that said, it's not good for Israeli governance. It's not good for Israeli rule of law. It's not good for the future of Israeli government stability. And we should be replacing our leaders through the democratic process of elections, not through hoping that the police will find some corruption charges and bring down our leadership.
All Netanyahu has said about the issue up to date is nothing will come of it because there is nothing. But the people around him have been pointing a finger and saying that this is all trumped up because Mendelblit, the Attorney General, was forced to do this by the press. Are you part of that conspiracy of the press to force Mendelblit's hand and create an investigation of the Prime Minister?
Look, I unequivocally reject, and we've done that repeatedly in the paper, the attempts by the Prime Minister to derail and to shut down the press and to keep the press quiet and to attack the press. I find it an attack on journalists, even from other newspapers and other news outlets. I feel that as the editor of a newspaper in Israel, it's our responsibility that we stand together and stand united. I find that at times I'm concerned about how much attention the Prime Minister gives to attacking journalists on a personal level and a personal basis. And I find that to be slightly disturbing. With that said, I don't think that there's any big conspiracy by the press to bring down the Prime Minister. I think it's an interesting strategy that the Prime Minister is engaging in. I think if you look throughout Prime Minister Netanyahu's career, and he deserves a lot of credit for a lot of different things, but one of the things that he's done politically is he's always drawn strength from positioning a threat to the people of Israel. So it was once the Palestinians, and you needed Netanyahu to protect you from them. Then it was the Iranian nuclear threat. You needed Netanyahu to protect you from the Iranians. Then it was Barack Obama, a hostile president. You needed Netanyahu to keep you strong and safe. And now it's the press. And I think that's largely a facade. It's fiction. I don't think the press is out to topple anyone. There are definitely left-wing and very liberal elements within the press, but there are also right-wing elements within the press.
And you're saying this as a person that would like to see the charges go away, you would like to believe that the Prime Minister is not guilty, but you're rejecting the idea that the press are using pressure in order to push this investigation.
I think 100%. I think, look, if there are real allegations and real evidence, he needs to be investigated, he needs to be questioned, and this needs to be carried out to the full extent. But I don't, as a citizen of the state, I think it's bad for Israel and it's bad for our country that our leaders are constantly, lining up to be questioned and to be indicted and to be charged. I think that's bad for the country and it's bad for the state of Israel. So that saddens me. But with that said, I don't think there's any conspiracy. I think that the press here is vibrant. It's free. That's what you get in a democracy. That's important for a democracy, right? The role of the media is to be a watchdog. And I think that the Israeli press, sometimes they're a watchdog that bites with a hard bite and a sharp bite, but that's its job. And I think that we in the Jerusalem Post, as well as a lot of the other newspapers and electronic media outlets in this country, are doing their job the way they're supposed to do it.
Yaakov Katz, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you.
Following through on their promise to retaliate for UNSC Resolution 2334, Israel has just cut $6 million in funding to the United Nations. The money represents the budget allocated to 4 different committees dedicated to Palestinian issues and was deducted from Israel's $40 million total annual contribution to the UN. Israeli ambassador to the UN Dani Danon said in a statement that, quote, "It is unreasonable for Israel to fund bodies that operate against us at the UN. We seek to stop the practice where the UN is used solely as a forum for unending attacks against Israel. Resolution 2334, on the surface, calls all Israeli settlement construction and activities outside the 1948 armistice lines illegal, even though the territories are technically disputed territories under international law. Below the surface of the resolution, however, is a subtle revisionism, as Jewish and Christian holy sites and cities are included and referenced as purely Muslim sites under Israeli occupation. Israel's decision to cut funding to the UN comes just a day after the United States House of Representatives voted in favor of condemning the UN and the Obama administration's actions. Even though he only has just days to go before leaving office, outgoing U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is feeling the need to involve himself in policy decisions of the next administration. The outgoing diplomat is warning that President-elect Donald Trump's promise to move the American embassy to Jerusalem is capable of detonating an absolute explosion he says could rock the entire region. According to Kerry, the relocation is likely to have a detrimental effect in the West Bank, Israel itself, and also the Jewish state's peace partners, Jordan and Egypt. During an interview with CBS News, Kerry also insisted any alternative to the two-state solution would pose an extraordinarily dangerous threat to Israeli democracy. Trump's promise to move the U.S. embassy to the Israeli capital has also sparked massive condemnations from Arab leaders. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas cautioned Trump against the move, and one of his closest aides says the act is a declaration of war. Sermons from Islamic clerics being repeatedly shown on official Palestinian TV call on Muslims to wake up to the danger in this assault on the Islamic faith, its holy places, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The Palestinians believe an American decision to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv signals official recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital on land they claim for their future state. The United States House of Representatives has overwhelmingly passed a resolution condemning UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which demanded an end to Israeli settlement building. Prime Minister Netanyahu released a video thanking the American lawmakers. Steve Leibowitz reports.
The U.S. Congress delivered a slap in the face to the outgoing Obama administration, which abstained rather than veto last month's anti-Israel resolution in the Security Council condemning Israeli settlement policy. The motion passed by a vote of 342 to 80. Incoming President-elect Donald Trump tweeted against the UN abstention as having stabbed a friend in the back. Congressmen for and against pulled no punches while explaining their votes.
I am stunned. I am stunned at what happened last month. This government, our government, abandoned our ally Israel when she needed us the most. Do not be fooled. This UN Security Council resolution was not about settlements, and it certainly was not about peace. It was about one thing and one thing only: Israel's right to exist as a Jewish democratic state. These types of one-sided efforts are designed to isolate and delegitimize Israel. They do not advance peace, they make it more elusive. It is time to repair the damage done by this misguided hit job at the UN. It's time to rebuild our partnership with Israel and reaffirm our commitment to her security.
What this resolution attempts to do is to reject the UN resolution that calls for a Palestinian state but not a Jewish state. A resolution that opens the door for those who want to impose boycott, divestment, or other sanctions measures against Israel or Israeli companies, and in essence declares Judaism's holiest site as occupied territory. That is what is in this resolution.
Who are we kidding? I heard the ranking member say this isn't about Obama, and yet virtually every statement on the other side of the aisle is trashing President Obama. If you want to simply condemn the UN resolution, let's do so. I'll join you. But that isn't what this is about. It's subterfuge. This is about kicking a president on the way out one more time, enhancing a false narrative about his lack of support for our ally Israel. And it greases the skids to defund the United Nations while they're at it.
Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a special message thanking Congress for its vote of support.
After the outrageous anti-Israel resolution at the UN, the U.S. House of Representatives voted yesterday resoundingly to support Israel and reject this one-sided resolution. Democrats and Republicans alike know that the Western Wall isn't occupied territory. They voted to either repeal the resolution at the UN or change it. And that's exactly what we intend to do. I want to thank the U.S. House of Representatives, which reflects the tremendous support Israel enjoys among the American people. Thank you, America. Thank you, Congress.
UN Resolution 2334 was able to pass the 15-member council because the United States broke with a long-standing approach of shielding Israel and did not wield its veto power as it had many times before. This is Steve Leibowitz for ILTV.
Between the terror attack earlier today and more news regarding the investigation into Prime Minister Netanyahu, a lot of unsettling news has been unfolding. Joining me in the studio today is Knesset and Likud party member Sharren Haskel to give us an inside look into today's events and the ongoing criminal investigation. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So my first question for you is, how can we prevent these types of attacks earlier today? We have a terrorist who drove a truck into a group of soldiers getting off of a tour bus.
Mm-hmm. Look, this kind of attack, firstly, let me open with sending my condolences to the families of the 5 people who were murdered today. These kinds of attack, it's exactly the same as the attack that happened 3 weeks ago in Berlin. The goal is the same goal. The means are the same means. It's a terrorist driving a truck, trying to hit as many people as possible, to injure as many people as possible for this one purpose. And I think during these times, it's these times where the international community needs to unite. We all know that we need to fight terror today. We need to fight it together by sharing information, by sharing intelligence, and by working in cooperation. I think this is one of the main keys into fighting these individual terror attacks. We know that all of it is being promoted and incited on media, on social media mainly. And so the only way that we can really fight it is by joining forces together, joining information that leads to these people so that we can prevent it before.
So do you think that this, because you mentioned the Berlin attack, do you think that this might change the way certain people see Israel or our relationship abroad, or it's more the same?
Unfortunately, I don't believe so. And I'll tell you what, it's just that we've been through so many different types of terrorism that you can find similarities in so many different countries throughout the years. Every time there's a double standard towards Israel. Some people, some media outlets describe it as if it's either less of a value or as if it's not considered a terror attack. I mean, how can you say that the Berlin event is a terror attack and the one that happened today in Israel is not? This is just a double standard that some of the international community is applying towards Israel.
So I wanted to ask also, we've read reports earlier that the terrorist was named as Fadi al-Kanabir by Palestinian media, and that he was a released prisoner from Israel. Do you think that this might, affect our prisoner swap relations or policy?
I'll tell you what, I think the situation with the prisoners, we know that it's very difficult, almost impossible to have prisoners from terror activities to be rehabilitated. And specifically in this extreme Muslim community where you hear this incitement, when he's returning from prison, instead of if we compare it to other prisoners, where they're ashamed of what they've done, where they have remorse towards what they did if they murdered someone or hurt someone in a violent way, they remorse it and they try to go into a normal kind of life. But in this kind of community, where they treat them as heroes, where they go and they praise them. The minute he returned to his home, he was treated as a hero, being praised, being given money and anything that he needs. What kind of rehabilitation would this terrorist have? And this is the major question that we need to ask. How to stop this incitement? How to stop this community that is embracing those people who are hurting in violent ways, other people treating them as heroes, naming them, naming schools or streets after them. The minute I know that the Palestinian Authority and other communities will stop praising these acts, this is the minute when we will be able to see a change, maybe some kind of rehabilitation as well.
All right. So I'd like to move on, if I may, to Prime Minister Netanyahu and the investigation into alleged graft. Reports earlier today revealed that there were alleged dealings between Yediot Achronot publisher Arnon Moses and Netanyahu, whereby Yediot will give Netanyahu more favorable coverage in return for pressures on Sheldon Adelson to close down his competitor Israel Hayom. Do you think that there is any credibility to these allegations?
I'll tell you what. The Prime Minister of Israel is under attack. He's been under attack for the past few years. Every week, some members, even politicians, some members of the opposition, and some reporters as well, as we've seen before, even like media outlets, time after time are trying to bring up things that eventually either never get investigated, or you find that there was nothing in there before. And they raise it time after time because they decided that they've given up on the democratic way to fight and win the right wing that is right now in government. I mean, the way that you need to defeat your opponent in a democratic country is through the poll. Go and bring voters who believe in you, who will vote for you. But when I see posts by politicians or messages by different politicians or media outlets saying that we are going to exhaust this prime minister until he's resigned, then there's a huge question mark over every single allegation that is coming up. Should the police investigate these things? Yes, of course. But to come on national TV and say that the Prime Minister is corrupt, that they've already sentenced him, that this reporter already said what his sentence should be, or what happened in this investigations. I'm sorry, but reporters are not police officers. They don't have any experience in police investigating. They don't have any experience to be judges or understanding these kinds of things. And I tell them to just wait a minute. Just wait. Let the people who are expert in these things to do their job and bring up the truth out. And if the truth is that there was nothing there, similar to many cases that were before, while he was under attack in the last few years, then just give him the benefit of the doubt. This is the Prime Minister of Israel.
So, all right. Well, I think that that's a good point to leave off. And thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. The end-of-the-year report card is just in on the performance of Israeli high-tech companies, and the scores are outstanding. ILTV's Natasha Kirchuk has more on the story.
There was a 12% increase in business over 2015, with Israeli firms racking up a total of $10 billion. The high-tech sector closed 104 exit deals, including M&As, meaning mergers or acquisitions, investor buyouts, or initial public offerings. The largest acquisition of 2016 was a phenomenal $4.4 billion purchase of an Israeli online gaming company called Playtika to a giant Chinese interactive group. Meanwhile, startups in the Jewish state succeeded in attracting an unprecedented $700 million in investments, and the numbers show that cybersecurity is still one of the country's strongest tech clusters. Even though all this data is impressive, it's a little misleading because figures have been even higher in previous years. It's also important to remember that there was an all-time record in Israeli M&A expenditures, adding up to nearly $3.33 billion spending spree. Industry experts are optimistic that the cumulative dynamics of Israeli ingenuity and innovation forecast an even better turnout next year.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Today's word is lehitchanen, which means to beg or appeal. From Sergeant Azaria's appeals to a higher court to your teenager begging for that new smartphone, there are a lot of uses for lehitchanen. Your dog might mitchanen or beg at the table. The toddler you babysit for will mitchanen for a piggyback ride. And if you're a parent, you better move fast through the checkout aisle before the little angel with you mitchanen for candy. However you encounter the begging in your life, just remember how the saying goes. If it's meant for you, you won't have to mitchanen for it. You will never have to sacrifice your dignity for your destiny. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be rainy and cold as thunderstorms intensify overnight. The low will be around 48 or 9 degrees Celsius. The storms are expected to continue into tomorrow as temperatures continue to drop. The projected high is about 57 or 14 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.85 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight.